Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. First, I'd like to say that I want to thank all of the emergency responders who've been on the ground, working around the clock since the onset of this train derailment, protecting the community and preventing the loss of human life or injuries. I had the opportunity to thank many of them earlier today. These public servants represent the best of us, and I'm deeply grateful for them and their incredible support with us today. Many members of the delegation are on the ground working hard on this issue. Senator Vance, Senator Fetterman, Senator Casey, Congressman Nels, Governor Shapiro, and Governor DeWine, with whom I spoke with yesterday. An emergency response effort like this requires a whole of government approach. All levels of government working hand in hand to keep residents safe. I'm proud to say that's exactly what's happening here in East Palestine. Nearly 2 weeks ago, the residents of East Palestine experienced a terrible incident with the derailment of train cars carrying hazardous substances. This incident has understandably shaken this community to its core, forcing families to temporarily leave their homes, worry about their health and safety of their children, and even question the information that they're receiving from all of us. The community has questions, and we hear you, we see you, and that we will get to the bottom of this. I've told residents, including Ms. Christina Ferguson, whose home I just left and had the privilege of meeting with earlier today, that I understand her fears and I understand her family's worries. I'm a father, first and foremost, a husband and the son of parents over the age of 70. All families need to know that they are safe. I want this community to know that they don't have to manage this issue on their own. As President Biden told Governor DeWine, anything the state needs, we will be here to help. As Governor DeWine and I discussed last night, we are going to get through this as a team. And at the same time, we are absolutely going to hold Norfolk Southern accountable, and I can promise you that. From the very beginning, EPA personnel have been on site, supporting local and state partners as they've led emergency response efforts. We've had boots on the ground, leading robust air quality testing, including the Advanced Technological Aspect Plane and a mobile analytical laboratory in and around East Palestine. Since the fire went out, EPA air monitoring has not detected any levels of health concern in the community that are attributed to the train derailment. EPA has assisted with the screening of more than 480 homes under the voluntary screening program offered to residents, and no detections of vinyl chloride or hydrogen chloride were identified. And we're continuing to make those screenings available to any resident that wants to have their indoor air tested. We're also continuing to conduct 24/7 air monitoring to ensure the health and safety of all residents. As it relates to water, EPA is supporting Ohio and the local government in determining what impacts the spill has had on surface and groundwater and ensuring that the derailment has not had an effect on drinking water supplies. The state is also working with local health agencies and public water systems to get their drinking water from groundwater sources. The state is currently awaiting those test results. For residents who rely on private drinking water wells, EPA has worked together with Ohio EPA and local health agencies to develop a residential re-entry plan to ensure that homeowners can get their private wells tested. Until test results are received, the Ohio Department of Health has recommended that residents use bottled water. EPA is also continuing to collect samples from surface water for our laboratory analysis in support of Ohio EPA. Our analysis includes a full suite of chemicals, including vinyl chloride and we are sharing those results with the Ohio EPA and the Ohio River Valley Water Sanitation Commission. EPA has also issued a letter to Norfolk Southern outlining actions at the site and how the agency will hold the railroad accountable for cleanup and cost under EPA's circular authority. Let me be clear, EPA will exercise our oversight and our enforcement authority under the law to be sure we are getting the results that the community deserves. And in coordination with the state, we will be here as long as it takes to ensure the health and safety of this community. We're not going anywhere until we do. With that, I'll invite up to the podium.
Mr. Regan, thank you. Congressman Deluzio, welcome. And Dan Vogels, thank you for the work and I've been very impressed with how the two EPAs have worked so well together. I was with Mayor Conaway earlier today. I spent an hour or so with the only full-time firefighter, Fire Chief Drabick, and about a half dozen of his volunteer fire departments. There are about 40 of them. Their fire department is right next to maybe 30 feet, 50 feet from the tracks. And the train had derailed 2 miles earlier. Sooner it would have destroyed the whole fire station and much else. So, and special thanks to the mayor and the fire chief. The work they did saved people's lives, pure and simple. I want to thank Ann Vogel, the head of Ohio's EPA, and the EPA employees, both the state employees, the EPA, and the federal employees of the EPA for coming in here and spending every day in the last 2 weeks. I'm here today to listen to people of East Palestine tell me what they need from the Senate and from the House and from the federal government. I've been working with the White House. I spoke to the new chief of staff to President Biden just yesterday about East Palestine. It was literally the top of his agenda and my agenda when we spoke on 5 or 6 different issues. Had great difficulty coming back to her home. Others have wanted to come back in, haven't been able to yet, but we have urged people, about 500 so far, have been tested when they come back to their homes. And that's very important that everybody should ask for that test before they go back into their homes if they've evacuated. And we also expect, and so far they've done it, Norfolk Southern to pay for every one of those tests. I also, as I said, spoke to the fire department today. 40 of them for essentially 40 to 43 hours were full-time at the site of that fire after the fire started Friday night, almost 2 weeks ago. My office and I are exploring every option from the beginning. I talked to the National Transportation Safety Board, talked to the federal EPA, talked to the Centers for Disease Control, talked to the Federal Rail Authority to make sure they were coordinating and doing what they needed to do. We've sent letters, bipartisan letters, Senator Vance and I with Senators Casey and Fetterman from your state, to both, to the administrator and to a couple other agencies to make sure that they are doing the right thing. In the end, the important thing to me is that we hold, as the administrator said, that we hold Norfolk Southern accountable. That means accountable for the test for people to move back in, accountable for all the cleanup that will take weeks. I don't know how long, but at least weeks, to assure people that the water is safe and the air is safe and the soil is safe for their children, for the 4,000 plus residents here, and make sure Norfolk Southern does what it says it's going to do, what it promised. One other point to make, I think, is as Norfolk Southern writes checks of $1,000 and $2,000 for residents, I just ask Norfolk Southern to not force people. So far, we think they haven't done that, to force people to give up their legal rights to accept that money. There is no justification ever for that. These are people that are struggling, that some have lost their jobs, at least temporarily. Others have lost a great deal because they're away from home. Ms. Ferguson today we asked her about her hotel bills, and you can't stay in a hotel for a week without spending a lot of out-of-pocket money. And That's just something that Norfolk Southern needs to come. So my job will be to keep listening to people in East Palestine. And Caleb in my office, who lives in Mingo Junction, just one county south of here, will continue to monitor. He will be here regularly. I will be here as often as it takes. And most importantly, I will be watching Norfolk Southern. Watching them and letting them know I'm watching them is important as anything I can do. So, am I introducing Congressman Johnson? Are you speaking next? I'm sorry. Congressman Johnson next, and then go from there.
Well, thank you, Senator, and thank you, Administrator Regan. I want to echo just a couple of things that have already been said. What an unmitigated disaster this has been inflicted on the people of East Palestine. No community should have to go through something like this. But you need to know that you're not alone. You've heard from Administrator Regan, and I've heard him say it numerous times. They're here until the job is done, for as long as it takes. And Administrator Regan, I want to thank you for coming today. It means a lot to these folks here. To Director Vogel, thank you to the state EPA and for all the hard work. If there is a bright spot to be found in all of this, it's what Senator Brown talked about, the collaboration between the federal EPA and the state EPA and the work that they're doing to try and solve the problems as they are identified. That has been a bright spot. I too want to thank Ms. Ferguson for opening up her house, her home, and sitting and sharing with us the anguish and the fear, the frustration, the concern, long-term and near-term, for what this has meant to her family. And as she was talking, I sat there thinking, there are so many families in this community that feel the same way that she does, and they just don't have an opportunity to voice it. Here's what I want to say to the residents of East Palestine. You are not alone. I am here. I work for you. It's not the other way around. You don't work for me. I work for you. My office is open. You've heard Administrator Regan say, call the EPA if you have problems with your air testing, if you need to get your house tested. Director Vogel is working the water side of the issue with the state EPA. We can get you those resources. But if you've got other questions and concerns that you're not getting answered, call my office. I'm not that hard to find. You can find me on the web, www.belljohnson.house.gov. You get in touch with me there, and I guarantee you we'll get you an answer. Now, Senator Brown and I are going to be working on some other things. Once the National Transportation Safety Board report comes out and we find out what caused this thing, we think that we have good ideas about what caused it. There are a lot of questions about how this could have potentially been prevented and what we can do to make sure that, that nothing like this ever happens to another community, either here in Ohio or across the river in Pennsylvania, anywhere. This kind of thing should not happen. So thank you folks for coming out and covering this today, helping us to get the message out to the residents of East Palestine. Now let me turn it over to Director Vogel.
Good afternoon, I'm Ann Vogel, Governor DeWine's Director of the Ohio EPA. On behalf of Governor DeWine, I do want to say to the residents of East Palestine, thank you so much for coming out last night. Thank you for sharing your concerns. Thank you for listening to us explain science and test results and the nerdy stuff. We had a lot of good conversations, and as everyone has said here, please know that you're heard. I've got a whole team here. Governor DeWine's cabinet officials are here. I'm here on behalf of Governor DeWine. Really appreciate Administrator Regan being here with a lot of his team as well. Administrator Regan has been talking all day about taking down barriers to residents getting help, and that is just the right message. That is consistent with the conversation I know Governor DeWine had with Administrator Regan, but also President Biden this morning. So this morning, the governor did talk with President Biden. He has requested assistance from the CDC. He has requested assistance in terms of medical professionals on the ground to provide physical and mental behavioral health counseling services. So that request was formalized just a little bit ago. So please, you can find that in the news as well. I want to say thank you to the Ohio EPA team who has been on the ground since the accident. They're doing a phenomenal job. They're keeping a close eye on the railroad, on the recovery efforts. Remember that this is the emergency phase. We're getting the contaminated soil and water off the ground and away from you. That is what's happening right now. We are not going anywhere. The remediation phase is next, and it will take as long as it takes. So please, epa.ohio.gov. We're posting all of the sampling results that we get. I have the unenviable position of maybe updating some news for you, Administrator Regan, that we do have the municipal well test back. That probably happened while you were in transit, and the water, we are not showing any evidence of any contaminants. The governor pushed that news out yesterday. The municipal water wells are safe to drink. So that is great news in terms of those results. We will continue to test. We will continue to test and be helpful in testing private wells. I've been having a lot of good conversations with our regional administrator for Region 5, the US EPA. We're talking about our partner. We heard you last night. We heard that you are fearful and you are concerned, even if you're not within the mile radius, about your wells and your air. We're going to figure out how to expand the region. We want you to feel comfortable being safe in your home. The sign on that introduces you or welcomes you to East Palestine says, East Palestine, the place to be. So our commitment to you from Governor DeWine and the Ohio EPA is that we're going to return it. We're going to make sure East Palestine continues to be the place to be. Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. Administrator?
Mr. Regan, I have a question for you from a local resident.
And what we'll do is I'll answer yours first, and then we'll have Tim Carroll and my team help facilitate the questions.
Okay.
Go ahead first.
A local resident had this question. Given the test results that so far are showing no contamination, he was asking if you and the other authorities would allow your children to drink the water. Would you allow your children to bathe in the water?
You know, what I would say is if those homes have been tested, and if those homes have been tested by the state and given a clean bill of health, yes, as a father, I trust the science, I trust the methodology that this state is using, and as a parent, I would. But if those homes haven't tested or if they're on private well water, I would advise that they get those homes tested and continue, as Governor DeWine and the state health department has recommended, continue to use bottled water until those homes get tested. I would encourage every family in this community to reach out to the state or EPA to get their home air quality tested and their water tested. We have the resources to do it, we want to do it, and we want people to feel secure and safe in their own homes.
What about those that feel that Norfolk Southern is doing the testing, or the company that is being used represents the company? What would you say?
Any resident that has any question about their air quality or water quality, please reach out to EPA. Please reach out to the state. We will gladly test their air and test their water.
We'll go over here.
Christina and other residents have also had concerns about surface areas. Would those be tested for potential residue or anything like that? What do you tell residents?
I tell them that we are looking at well water, we're looking at municipal water, we're looking at surface water. We are testing every aspect of the water and every aspect of the air, and we are using very sound science and advanced technologies to ensure that we're protecting these communities.
But what about surface areas like railing or the outdoors of homes? Like if the people touch them and then touch their face, is that something that they should be concerned about?
You know, I think that's more of a question for the state. The state has primacy in terms of leading this response, and so I'll defer that to the EPA director.
That testing is not currently being done in terms of surface testing by the state of Ohio. I think it's a possibility. I know that there are some toxicologists who are doing it privately. I've heard about that. We haven't found a significant, we haven't found residue where we've been looking. The nature of the controlled release was such that those materials combusted and dissipated into the air, but certainly it's an option for homeowners to test the surfaces.
And you've been making information pretty public about the test results as far as vinyl chloride and hydrogen chloride being not detected in the soil, but what about butyl acrylate, phosgene, ethyl hexylacrylate, and ethylene glycol monobutyl?
And if folks could just list their name and outlet when they ask a question, that'd be helpful as well.
Sure. You know, here's what I'd say. The advanced technologies that we're using to test the water and the air. Let me speak to the air. We're using high technology that spans from an airplane that we deployed over the community to a mobile van. We have stationary air monitors, and we personally tested over 500 or close to 500 homes for their indoor air quality. We are testing for all volatile organic chemicals. We're testing for everything. We're testing for everything that was on that train. So we feel comfortable that we are casting a net wide enough to present a picture that will protect the community.
Question for Senator Brown. What does the area need to do to become eligible for federal assistance or for FEMA?
Well, I've been working with Governor DeWine. Ann Vogel just talked to you about his declaration this morning. We sent him a letter late yesterday. He is responding by asking, he talked to the White House this morning.
Yes, sir.
And the White House has talked to me about this. I think all of the, whether it's FEMA, whether it's CDC, whether it's EPA already, whether it's FRA, whether it's the Surface Transportation Safety Board, ST, all of them are on board. So you will see that seamless work between Governor DeWine on behalf of the state and President Biden and me, and I assume Senator Vance and Congressman and the two Congress people here from Ohio today working on this. So I think there's nothing to worry about that way.
What would that assistance look like?
Well, we don't know. It's what Governor DeWine asked for, but it's CDC testing. It's working on the people in charge of rail, or FRA and the Surface Transportation Safety Board. I didn't get that right, but close enough. On any of those agencies that Governor HHS is involved, any of those agencies that Governor DeWine needs service from.
So he's told that the state is not eligible for this. So it sounds
The
like
state is
there's
eligible.
something that the state wants that the federal government is saying.
I don't think there is. I think that everything that the state government is, everything that I can see that the state government is asked for, they are eligible, and I will fight on behalf of Governor DeWine and the state to make sure that they get those services.
Patrick Rosagers, the Associated Press, either Senator Brown or Congressman Johnson. The other day, the governor said that it was absurd that the train was classified as hazardous. The majority of the freight did not contain chemicals. What can the federal government do to change the regulations or like alert people in the area when the hazardous chemicals?
Yeah, as soon as we learned about that, my team in Washington began working with the Department of Transportation to understand how that process works. What is the criteria for being labeled a hazardous carrying or hazardous material carrying train? How does it happen? Who pulls the trigger to say yes or no? Is it one car out of 100? Is it 20 cars out of 50? We know that 20 of the 50 that derailed here had chemicals in them. It also has something to do with the types of chemicals that are in there. There are different levels of chemicals. Some are more hazardous than others, and it really depends on some of that to determine, to make sure that states know it, and that when states know it, then that they pass it down to communities, because that will determine some parameters about how a train is operated too. So bottom line is that we're on it. That's another reason. That's another reason why I think it's really important that the Transportation Secretary come and take a look at this himself.
Let me answer that for a second too. Because these are all interstate travel, governed by the FRA and the NTSB. The governor's right about this. Both Bill and I I think he said he didn't really know it, I didn't really know it, but those cars, however many of the 50 cars or the 100 cars carry these chemicals, that car should be labeled with those chemicals. We made it with that designation. We're going to try to get FRA or NTSB to do it, but we think we might need a change in federal law, and Bill and I will work on that.
What would have been different? If the train had been designated hazardous, would it have to slow down?
Well, it would have meant people monitoring it. If the fire department would know what it is immediately, that would be helpful. I think that it would. It's not clear to me that engines always follow the speed limits in different parts of the country, and they probably drive faster in rural areas than they do in urban areas. Those tracks are not necessarily built for that speed. Understand that Norfolk Southern, they did major stock buybacks, major dividends. In fact, the total stock buybacks and dividends were greater than the investment they made in rails. They need to pay more attention to upkeep of rails if they're having those cars.
Yeah, suffice to say that when we get through that analysis, when we get the report back, when we figure out how that process works, obviously the more volatile, the more dangerous the hazardous material on the train is, it's going to guide, it's going to determine the kinds of parameters that the train is operated by. So that's going to be a work in progress, but we'll keep you posted.
Should this be declared a disaster or state of emergency? Do I declare this?
Administrators, should the EPA, should the federal government consider a ban on transportation of vinyl chloride by rail in the wake of this incident, why or not?
You know, what I want to do is not get ahead of transportation. The president has indicated that we all should do what he said from day one, which is a whole of government approach. So you have multiple federal agencies looking at this issue, and you actually have multiple levels of government here today with Congress, local government, state government, and the federal government. So we're going to do a full evaluation of what occurred collectively, and then we're going to govern. We can be sure that nothing like this ever happens again.
I have a question for you. So you have said that it is safe. We have been in homes where they have train cars in the backyard. They had to throw out the trampoline and the kids' toys and all that kind of stuff in the backyard. Two questions. Number one, you're a family man. You have kids. Would you feel comfortable living there and having your kids play in the backyard, knowing that those train cars were on fire and there was that plume? And also, if you're looking to buy a home, a lot of people that are like wanting to sell, would you move in?
You know, I have to say, listen, this is the site of a very serious, they've been asked to leave their homes. This is a site that is, we're responding to an emergency. What I would say is, the charge that we have is ensuring that if people come back to their homes, that they're safe. And based on the air quality analysis, based on advanced technology, and based on the work that the state has done to test the water, the air and the water are safe for those residents that we have deemed being safe and to come back in. If the water or the air has not been tested, I am asking the residents to please seek out that testing from both the EPA and the state of Ohio.
So you would stay put if the EPA said it was okay. If they came to your house, you would stay put.
If the EPA
said that your water
said that my air quality was safe, and the state said that the water has been tested and the water quality is safe, then I would trust those readings. And if and yes, I would re-enter my home. Now, obviously, there are people who would make different decisions based on their means. And if people want to go different places and want more assurances or want time to pass a little bit, they have a right to do that. But for those who can't, I am asking that they trust the government. And that's hard. We know that there is a lack of trust, which is why the state and the federal government have pledged to be very transparent. As soon as we get information, we're posting that information. People can look at that information. They can also have third parties look at that information and verify it. The state of Ohio and EPA are working hand in hand. And if we say that the water is safe and the air is safe, we believe it because we've tested it and the data shows it.
In Mr. Regan, Channel 19 in Cleveland, EPA samples are saying that the air and water for the the city or the village of East Palestine is safe, but a lot of people we've talked to are skeptical of those results, saying they have health concerns now. What do you want to say to those residents?
You know, for those who are experiencing some sort of adverse health reaction, we ask that they please seek medical attention. Also, we ask that they contact the local and state health agencies because we want that information. We want to hear from people. We also, though, have done the testing in specific areas, water and air. And for those areas that we have deemed safe, we believe that because the science and the data proves that. But that is not to discount any experience that any resident is having. So if they're having those experiences, please seek medical help and please notify local health agencies.
What does that say that a lot of them are developing rashes? One person said they were coughing up blood and they've had a lot of issues with breathing. I mean, does that not say something with the results of the EPA's finding?
You know, it's saying that we should really encourage those individuals that are having those experiences to seek medical assistance and be sure that the local health agencies have that information as well.
But a lot of these residents don't have doctors in the area. They say a lot of them don't know what to test for. And a lot of them can't just drive to Pittsburgh or Cleveland an hour and a half away. So what resources, I know Governor DeWine is bringing people into East Palestine, but what can these people do right now to make sure their families are safe?
They should reach out to the local health departments. The local health departments, the state health departments, the county health departments.
What's the plan for testing to make sure that they're not having impacts?
Last night, we had representatives of the county health department there. There was one of the doctors there, and if you remember, a question similar to this came up. Go to the doctor, get a finding on what the ailment is, get that medical record, keep that medical record, make sure the county health official knows about it, make sure that the authorities like the EPA and others, they need that information. If there's something happening that the tests are not detecting. Now, we're not saying that that's the case, but if it were, we would want to know that.
But even 10 to 15 years down the line, you know, God forbid this becomes a cancer cluster, how can these people and their kids prevent that?
Yeah, prevent it?
I mean, how can they keep themselves safe in their homes? A lot of people aren't going home because they're afraid to breathe in that air. God forbid they get cancer.
Like the administrator said, every family has to make their own decisions, but the science speaks for itself. If your home has been air tested, your water has been tested, if you're still having other symptoms, then you have other decisions that you need to make, and you need to let the authorities know. If you don't have a physician, start with the health department, and let's go from there. If you don't have any answers, call my office and we'll try to help individual cases figure out what to do.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to note that we have representatives from all of the agencies here today. Before we wrap, we have just a couple more minutes so we can take one more question. I want to go right here.
Hi, I'm Alex Mantley from Kent State University. I have a question. Does anybody have an update on the chemical fluid found in the Ohio River and if that's going to affect any water supplies in other areas?
I do. So the Orsanco, which is the Ohio River Sanitary folks, they're the ones that their early detection system, their organic detection system, has been tracking what you're talking about, the plume. We know where it is. It'll be in Huntington, West Virginia tomorrow. So far, the levels of detection are so far beneath any health concerns as established by the federal agency that determines health levels for new toxins. So we don't have any health concerns. We also are confident that the water treatment systems all along the Ohio River are following it very closely. And so far, the existing treatments in place are capable of handling any level of contaminants.
Is there a plan for long-term testing for people who are worried that they might not be having health effects right now, that something might show up in 5-10 years? Is there a plan to continue monitoring this area?
There is. Part of the, again, so there's two phases to an incident such as this. This is the emergency phase. We are, as we speak, working on the long-term remediation plan. That will include a sampling plan for surface water, for drinking water, for air, all of the things that you're talking about, and for soil as well.
But what about people? This is the thing. Have you been able to talk to people who say they were ill and determine that in fact there's no connection to the derailment? And here you're talking about testing water, soil, so forth going forward. I think she's asking about monitoring individuals.
Right, and I don't have an answer for you. I'm not the health department, but as I think we mentioned, there are other representatives here from the governor's cabinet And the local health department did address that last night as well. The governor, of course, calling in the CDC to set up some of that physical health testing, I think is meant to address those concerns.
Thank you so much, everybody. That's all the time, but folks.